I thought I had the perfect life, the perfect husband, the perfect sister. But one secret phone call shattered everything. What I discovered that night changed my life forever. My name is Grace Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a financial analyst in the city. I've always believed in hard work, faith, and honesty, and I thought my life was perfect, until I discovered that the people I trusted most could betray me in the cruelest way imaginable. This is my story. The day I married Daniel was the day I believed my life had finally begun. The church was glowing with golden light from the stained glass windows. White roses lined the aisle, their sweet fragrance filling the sanctuary as the soft music of the piano floated through the air. I remember standing behind the church doors, my hands trembling as I held my bouquet. My father squeezed my hand gently. "Are you ready, Grace?" he asked. I smiled nervously. I've been ready my whole life. And in that moment, I truly believed it. Because Daniel was everything I had ever prayed for. Kind. Successful. Gentle. Faithful. When the doors opened and I saw him standing at the altar, his eyes filled with tears the moment he saw me. My heart melted. He whispered when I reached him, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." The entire church smiled as our pastor spoke about love, commitment, and faith. When Daniel placed the ring on my finger, he looked directly into my eyes. "I promise to love you, protect you, and never betray your heart." Everyone clapped when we kissed. Everyone believed in us. Including me. What I didn't know that day was that the biggest betrayal of my life was already quietly forming. And the person who would help destroy my marriage was sitting in the front row. My sister. Lydia. She clapped louder than anyone else. She hugged me tightly after the ceremony. "I'm so happy for you," she said with a bright smile. But when she pulled away, for just a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Something I couldn't explain. Something cold. Something calculating. But I ignored it. Because that day, I believed my life was perfect. And I believed my sister loved me. I had no idea. She was about to destroy everything. 2 years after our wedding, life still felt like a dream. Daniel and I had built a beautiful home on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't a mansion, but it was warm and peaceful. We spent quiet evenings cooking together, watching movies, and praying before bed. People always told us we were the perfect couple. And honestly, I believed we were. Until the night Lydia called me crying. It was almost midnight when my phone rang. "Grace. I don't know where else to go." Her voice sounded broken. "What happened?" I asked immediately. "My boyfriend kicked me out. I have nowhere to stay." My heart shattered for her. Lydia had always struggled with relationships. Without hesitation, I told her the obvious. "Come stay with us." Daniel overheard the conversation and nodded. "Of course she can stay," he said. At the time, his kindness made me love him even more. The next morning Lydia arrived with 2 suitcases and red swollen eyes. I hugged her tightly. "You're safe here." She looked around the house slowly. "This place is beautiful," she said softly. Daniel carried her bags upstairs. "It's not much," he told her, "but the guest room is comfortable." She smiled at him. A long smile. I didn't think anything of it. For the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. But slowly, little things began to change. Lydia started spending a lot of time in the living room with Daniel. Laughing. Talking. Sharing stories. Sometimes I would walk into the room and the conversation would suddenly stop. "Hey," Lydia would say quickly. "Hey," Daniel would add casually. Then silence. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, she was my sister. And he was my husband. They would never betray me. Right? But one night, I came downstairs unexpectedly. And what I saw made my stomach twist. Lydia and Daniel were sitting very close together on the couch. Too close. When they noticed me, they quickly moved apart. Couldn't sleep? Daniel asked casually. I forced a smile. Just getting water. But as I walked back upstairs, a strange feeling crept into my chest. Something wasn't right. And deep inside, my intuition was beginning to whisper a warning. At first, the changes in Daniel were subtle. Small things. Things that could easily be explained. But slowly, they became impossible to ignore. He started working late more often. Big project at the office, he would say while loosening his tie. He used to call me during the day. Now he barely texted. He used to kiss me every morning before leaving. Now some mornings he rushed out the door. But the thing that hurt the most was the way he looked at Lydia. One evening we were having dinner together. Lydia told a joke and Daniel laughed harder than I had ever seen him laugh before. I stared at him. Because he hadn't laughed like that with me in months. Later that night I confronted him gently. Are you okay lately? I asked. He looked confused. What do you mean? You've been distant. He sighed. Grace, you're imagining things. I'm just stressed from work. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something inside my heart refused to settle. Then one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. Daniel wasn't in bed. I assumed he had gone to the bathroom. But when I walked downstairs, the kitchen lights were off. The living room was empty. And the guest room door, where Lydia slept, was slightly open. My heart started pounding. I stepped closer slowly. And then I heard it. A whisper. Daniel's voice. Inside Lydia's room. My entire body froze. And in that moment, I realized something was terribly wrong. But what I was about to discover would shatter my entire world. After the dinner at my parents' house, I couldn't ignore the feeling in my chest anymore. Something was terribly wrong. For days, my mind replayed every strange moment I had witnessed. The whispering. The late nights. The secret phone call. The glances across the dinner table. At first, I had tried to convince myself I was overthinking things. But now, the evidence was stacking up like a mountain I could no longer climb over. So I decided to do something I never thought I would do. I started paying attention. Very close attention. I began watching their behavior carefully. Daniel started guarding his phone more than usual. If a message came in while I was nearby, he would quickly flip the phone face down. Sometimes he even left the room to answer calls. Lydia had also changed. She dressed differently now. More carefully. More provocatively. And strangely, she always seemed to do this on the days Daniel worked from home. One afternoon I walked into the kitchen unexpectedly. Lydia and Daniel were standing very close together. Too close. They jumped apart when they saw me. Daniel immediately grabbed a glass of water. Just thirsty, he said quickly. Lydia smiled casually. We were just talking. But the tension in the air was suffocating. That night I did something I never imagined I would do to my own husband. While Daniel was in the shower, I checked his phone. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely breathe. At first, everything looked normal. Work emails. Family messages. Nothing suspicious. Then I saw something strange. A contact saved under a fake name. Mark, office. But the message preview underneath made my blood run cold. I miss you already. My heart stopped. Slowly, I opened the conversation. The messages that appeared on the screen shattered my entire world. I wish Grace would go out more often. Tonight was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. Because the messages weren't from a coworker. They were from Lydia. My sister. My own sister. The phone slipped from my hands. And suddenly the terrible truth I had been denying finally stood before me. Daniel and Lydia were having an affair. But the worst part was that I still didn't know how far it had gone. And deep down, I was afraid to find out. 2 nights later, Daniel told me he had to work late again. He barely looked at me when he said it. Big meeting tomorrow, he explained while putting on his jacket. I nodded slowly. Okay. But something in his tone felt rehearsed. As soon as he left the house, Lydia came downstairs. She was dressed beautifully. Her hair styled. Makeup carefully done. My stomach twisted. Going somewhere? I asked. She smiled sweetly. Just meeting a friend. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out the door. My heart began racing. I waited 10 seconds. Then I grabbed my car keys. And followed her. The night air was cool and quiet as I drove a short distance behind her car. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Please let this be a misunderstanding. Please let me be wrong. But deep inside, I already knew the truth. Lydia eventually pulled into the parking lot of a small upscale restaurant. My heart pounded violently. I parked across the street where they couldn't see me. And then, I saw him. Daniel stepped out of his car. Lydia walked toward him. For a moment they stood there, smiling at each other like two people deeply in love. Then Daniel pulled her into his arms. And kissed her. Right there in the parking lot. My entire body went numb. The pain that exploded in my chest was unbearable. I felt like my heart had been ripped apart. Tears streamed down my face as I watched the two people I loved most in the world betray me in the most cruel way imaginable. They laughed together. They held hands. And then they walked inside the restaurant together. Like a couple. Like I had never existed. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, shaking. Trying to breathe. Trying to process what I had just seen. Finally, I drove home slowly. My mind spinning. My world collapsing. But the worst part was that the nightmare wasn't over yet. Because what I would discover later that night would destroy the last piece of my heart. When I returned home, the house was silent. Too silent. I sat on the couch in the dark for a long time. Thinking. Crying. Trying to understand how my life had fallen apart so quickly. Hours passed. Then finally, around midnight, the front door opened. Daniel and Lydia walked in together. Laughing. My heart shattered again. They hadn't noticed me sitting in the dark. Lydia whispered playfully. You should stay tonight. Daniel chuckled softly. You're dangerous. Maybe, she replied teasingly. Then he pulled her close. And kissed her again. Right there in my living room. The lamp beside me clicked on. They both froze. Their faces drained of color when they saw me. Grace, Daniel whispered. Lydia stepped back quickly. But it was too late. I had seen everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every moment they thought I would never know. Tears streamed down my face as I stood slowly. How long? I asked quietly. Neither of them answered. How long have you been doing this to me? Daniel ran his hands through his hair. It's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Not what I think. My voice cracked. I just watched my husband kissing my sister in a restaurant parking lot. Lydia crossed her arms defensively. Maybe if you were a better wife. Stop. Daniel shouted suddenly. But the damage was already done. Those words cut deeper than any knife. I looked at my sister. The person I had trusted my entire life. How could you do this to me? She didn't even look ashamed. If I didn't take him, she said coldly, someone else would. My knees nearly gave out. Daniel tried to step toward me. Grace, please. Don't touch me. I cried. My voice echoed through the house. The home we had built together suddenly felt like a stranger's place. Everything I loved was gone. My marriage. My family. My trust. I grabbed my purse with shaking hands. Where are you going? Daniel asked. I wiped the tears from my face. Away from both of you. And as I walked out the door that night, I believed my life was over. But what I didn't know yet was that God had seen everything. And soon, the truth they were hiding would be revealed in a way neither of them could escape. That night, I drove for hours. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house. The house that once held laughter, prayers, and dreams now felt like a graveyard of lies. Every room suddenly felt contaminated with betrayal. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a small roadside motel. My hands trembled as I checked in. The room smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and old carpet. It wasn't the home I had built with Daniel. But at that moment, it was the only place where my heart could collapse in peace. The moment I closed the door behind me, I fell onto the bed and broke down completely. The pain was overwhelming. My chest felt like it was being crushed from the inside. How could they do this to me? I whispered through tears. My husband. My sister. The two people I trusted most in the world. Everything I had believed about my life was gone. The marriage I thought was strong had been an illusion. The sister I thought loved me had secretly envied me. By morning, the reality of my situation became painfully clear. Daniel controlled most of the finances. The house was under his name. And Lydia. She was already moving into my place. I later received a short message from Daniel. We need to talk about the divorce. Just like that. 10 years of love, reduced to a text message. I felt like I had lost everything. But what I didn't know then was that sometimes when everything falls apart, God is preparing something greater. 3 days later, I visited a small church near the motel. I hadn't planned to go. But something in my spirit felt drawn there. The sanctuary was nearly empty. Just a few quiet people scattered in prayer. I sat in the back row, exhausted and emotionally drained. For a long time I said nothing. Then finally, the tears came again. God, why? My voice was barely a whisper. Why did you let this happen to me? The silence in the church felt heavy. But something deep inside me finally broke open. I loved them. I trusted them. My hands trembled as I bowed my head. I don't understand this pain. For the first time since the betrayal, I prayed honestly. No fancy words. No perfect faith. Just raw pain. God, if you see what happened, please show the truth. I closed my eyes tightly. Expose whatever is hidden. At that moment, something strange happened. A deep peace slowly filled my chest. It didn't remove the pain, but it replaced the hopelessness. And a quiet thought entered my mind. You will not be destroyed by this. I lifted my head slowly. For the first time since that terrible night, I felt something I thought was gone forever. Hope. But I still had no idea how God would answer that prayer. Because the truth was about to explode in a way none of us expected. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Daniel's company announced a large corporate celebration dinner. It was a prestigious event attended by executives, investors, and business partners. Daniel had always loved events like that. Public recognition meant everything to him. To my surprise, I received a message from one of Daniel's coworkers. "You should come tonight." Confused, I almost ignored it. But something in my spirit told me to go. When I arrived at the hotel ballroom, the room was filled with elegant decorations and expensive suits. And there they were. Daniel and Lydia. Standing together. Smiling. Holding hands openly now. My heart tightened, but I stayed calm. Because something inside me told me. Tonight was different. The CEO soon stepped onto the stage. "Before we continue with tonight's awards," he announced, "there is something we need to address." The room grew quiet. Daniel's confident smile slowly faded. The CEO continued. "Recently, our internal investigation uncovered serious misconduct involving one of our senior managers." Murmurs spread across the room. My heart started racing. Then the CEO spoke the name. Daniel Carter. The entire room gasped. Daniel's face turned pale. The CEO continued firmly. "Our investigation discovered that Daniel had been falsifying company financial reports for personal gain." The room erupted with shocked whispers. Lydia's face went white. Daniel looked completely stunned. But the CEO wasn't finished. And as if that wasn't serious enough, he paused. "Our investigation also uncovered that Daniel had been secretly using company funds to support an undisclosed personal relationship with an individual connected to his family." Everyone in the room turned toward Lydia. Their faces filled with judgment. The scandal was now completely public. Security guards approached Daniel. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Daniel looked completely destroyed. His career. His reputation. His future. All collapsing in front of hundreds of people. And Lydia, the woman who helped destroy my marriage, now stood humiliated before everyone. That night, their secret was exposed for the entire world to see. But God wasn't finished yet. The scandal spread quickly. Within days, Daniel lost his job. His reputation in the industry collapsed overnight. Legal charges soon followed for financial fraud. Investors demanded accountability. The company filed a lawsuit. Meanwhile, Lydia faced her own consequences. Friends distanced themselves. Family members refused to support her actions. The same people she once bragged to about winning my husband now avoided her completely. Because the truth had finally surfaced. And the truth had consequences. Months later, I received unexpected news. The court ruling forced Daniel to liquidate several assets to repay the company. One of those assets was the house. The very house where everything had fallen apart. But due to the legal settlement and certain financial arrangements, the property was offered to me. When I stood in front of the house months later, the memories flooded back. The good ones. And the painful ones. But this time, the house no longer represented betrayal. It represented survival. God had taken the very place where my heart was broken and turned it into a testimony. Daniel eventually moved to another city, trying to escape the damage to his name. Lydia disappeared from most family gatherings. And me? I slowly rebuilt my life. Stronger. Wiser. And closer to God than I had ever been before. Because sometimes the people who betray you think they have won. They think they have taken everything from you. But they forget something powerful. God sees everything. And when the truth is finally revealed, justice arrives in ways no one expects. Even the ones who thought they got away with it.